Quincy City Council President Ann Mahoney is joining us to bring us up to date on the March 16th City Council meeting. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Doing well. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And Evacuation Day, too, we can't forget.
Nope, we can't. Evacuation Day, happy St. Patrick's Day. We have it all. So, yeah. I used to always be jealous. My dad had St. Patrick's Day off because he worked in the Boston schools and I didn't. So I was like, how come we don't have Evacuation Day? So,
Suffolk County only, that's right.
exactly.
Very important this America 250 this year to make note of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the meeting last night. Started out with some public hearings, ordinance and finance, right?
Yep. So I think we had six public hearings last night. That was run by Councillor Ash. Two of them, I think, were held or denied, and four of them went through. And that's a typical kind of public hearing type thing. So, and then we moved on to the ordinance meeting, which was Maggie McGee's meeting. And she was talking about the salary raises and really the differentiation of the mayor's salary, because it won't go into play until 2028, and the council's raises that started here. And I think what from the gist of what was going on from the city solicitor was he's simply saying that we could all just write a letter saying that we basically we decline the raise, but it doesn't solve the problem of how the raises came about. And it would not mean all counselors would have to do that. So individually we can do that, but we're really, the raises are across the board. All nine of us get those raises and all nine of us should be paid the same amount. And so the idea of just I could defer it, and that's great, but if all nine of us are not, then where do you go from there? So really, it's what's the best way for us to do this? We were looking for that advice. And they made it seem like everybody came together to defer the raises last time, but ethics also had played a part in that. This was, they were going to give themselves raises. This is the prior council. Ethics got involved and they suggested that they wait until the next one. And that's how that happened. This next election that happened has already happened. Now we're at the stage here. And it's a matter of how do we go about all nine of us doing the right thing and going back and really focusing on how we can set those raises in a way that is palatable for the city, the constituents of the city, because they felt as though they were left out of that conversation. So
Right.
so that was the beginning of the conversation. There's going to be many more, I'm sure, and I'm sure there'll be many people's opinions of that too.
Okay, so were there any votes on the ordinances, Ann?
There were no votes last night on the ordinances, and the meetings went a little bit long. I think public hearing went a little bit longer, so it's like 6:35, and then ordinance went a little long. And so when we started for finance, which was the kind of the star of the show last night, right, was the finance meeting with the $2.6 million bond for the firefighter equipment gear. We started that about 7:05-ish, and we had a presentation from I think it's kicked off with Chris Walker from the mayor's office, followed by interim Chief Smith, and then the head of the union, Tom Bowes, and then we had the scientist, Dr. Priestley, that was there as well.
Right. As you said, that took up the bulk of the meeting, of
Yeah,
course.
it did. It was, it's a lot because when we're talking about this, we're the finance committee, so we're there for the financing of it, and I think we all understand. I mean, I happen to understand PFAS probably in a different context compared to my fellow colleagues, but PFAS is the forever chemical. It's impacting us all, and we did have a lot of conversations, and one of the things that I know if we're talking about science, but we probably should have spent more time talking about finances, but you can't ignore the science. You have a scientist in the room, you want to be able to ask those questions. So we were given a lot of information, and the natural thing to do when you get that kind of information is to discuss the science. I think one of the things that happened there last night is we ran out of time. There was 15 minutes per counselor. We were going to go back and have an extra 5 minutes right from the start. Noel came out and made a motion to approve without discussing anything, which is, that's fine, except for you have new counselors and people want to ask questions. And there's nothing wrong with doing your due diligence and asking questions. And we're going to have another meeting next Monday night. It's unfortunate to think that this means that we're not supportive of the firefighters. It couldn't be further or farther away from the truth at all. However, I too feel as though anytime I've made a big purchase or doing anything, you do the right thing, but you have to make sure that you're doing it the way you're doing it is equitable for everybody.
Sure. So I watched portions of the meeting, and some of the questions I saw that came up were, one, was there a guarantee that this new gear, if it is
Mhm.
purchased, will also be safe, right?
Yeah. And the thing is there's no 100% guarantee for anything because it might be safe from what now is the forever chemical, but tomorrow there might be another forever chemical. Because think about it, asbestos back in the day was, the magic thing for everything. We were using it in our water pipes in our houses, and insulation. It was everywhere, only to come to find out that it's very toxic and it can't be used. PFAS is the next there's a generation and Teflon was the same thing. Teflon was, everybody was buying it. I said it last night, you can still buy a Teflon pan at HomeSense and go grill make your grilled cheese off of it, and it's not going to be healthy for you, but people will continue to use it. Maybe they don't understand, but that's one of the things. And at the end of the day, this is a synthetic material that we're using, so it's all 100% man-made with chemicals going into it. And the question was, what's the secret sauce behind that chemicals? And that they don't have to tell you. So what we came away with is they used PFAS. Oh, and we understood that, but they also used another chemical that was not promised to not be in there, but was in there, and that's the flame retardant chemical. It's very dangerous as well. So those are two chemicals in the last couple of years that we've identified that are dangerous, and now we have to go get equipment that they tested and they believe is the right equipment. But the science, and that was one of the questions that came up. The science is evolving so fast, no different than our technology, and what we could be investing in for the next 10 years could eventually also be a problem. That doesn't mean we shouldn't invest. It's just we just have to make sure that we qualify that so that if we're in the situation again, that we documented that as well.
Yes, it's Chief Smith, the union president, spoke about this is the best information that we have at this time.
Right. And exactly. And it's the best information the whole country has at this time. And this isn't just even the United States. This is all around. And when you really think about it, it's in your groundwater, we're drinking that water. We're eating and foods that are grown in the ground that are also having those chemicals there. So it's a real issue. And then it's in the equipment. And part of it is to keep the reason why they're putting in the equipment was because it was a chemical that prevented to make that equipment work better for the firefighters, but it turned out to be a chemical. The protection was just as dangerous as what they were protecting them from. So it's definitely a balance. I don't think anybody was amiss of understanding the danger of PFAS or the chemicals we're talking about. The extension to the next meeting, I think, was simply there was more questions, and it really needs to get back to the financial questions. And it was geared last night as the science presentation. It wasn't geared towards the finance presentation. And I'm hoping that on Monday night it will be geared towards the finance presentation. And I'm positive that we're going to come to the right decision for this. It's just not going to be done. It just could be done in one meeting.
Okay, so this would be done as a bond, is that right?
That is the request of it being done as a bond. And that is that is some of the concerns that people have. When we talk about this, we're a city the size that we're at, we have $1.6 billion worth of debt. So when we're talking about the debt that we're taking on just for the $2.6 million, the question is, why do we have to bond $2.6 million? That's not a lot of money to bond, first of all. We should be able to either use free cash or use something, but we've used all of those reserves to draw down to lower the taxes last year. So we're really in a spot right now that there's no free cash is only $55,000, I believe. So we're being forced to bond something that typically Gear and most other communities, Newton paid from free cash. I think Providence, Rhode Island used the last of their ARPA funds to purchase them. San Francisco did the same thing. They were not bonding this equipment. So that's the question. Like, why do we have to bond? And if we don't bond it, the problem is we can't spend what we don't have in the budget. So we're being forced to bond something because the city's savings account, and I know the mayor had said that that's not his job to create savings account, but this is the exact reason why you would want to for these kind of emergency things. So we're being forced to bond something. We're really trying to, in my opinion, understand how we're moving forward, because this is a small number, 2.6, but when we're getting into some of those bigger things that are on the wish list, those are going to be a lot more, and we're already $1.6 billion into debt. So that's the concern. We have a balancing act that we have to play here, and those are the questions that have to be asked. Now, does that mean that we're not going to do it? I don't know. Those finance questions haven't been answered. So those are when you think about it, we lowered the taxes using premiums from sales of bonds. Is there any more premiums that they could get? We have a $175 million public safety building. Is there, that bought equipment for everything that's in that building? Is there any money in public safety building at this point? What's the final number looking like there? I don't know if there's any money that's stuff, but obviously there mustn't be because they're asking for a 2.6 billion dollar bond.
Right, but is using, this bond request the right avenue to get those questions answered?
Yeah, it has to be because that's how it was positioned to us. This is how it was sent to the council as a bond request, and that's our job, the due diligence that we have to ask. And if in the end we exhaust those answers, we will be getting the equipment one way or another because it's something that needs to be done. But those questions have to be answered. I just personally, if one of my counselors, if I was chairing that meeting and one of our counselors had questions, you might say, well, there's only one, we have the votes. But I think everybody's questions should be at least answered. And there were still a lot of questions on the table last night. And you could have gone around and you could have given everybody an extra 5 minutes, but they moved the vote instead. And moving the vote is just to say approve and take out a committee. So it failed because the questions weren't answered. It's not failing because people don't want to get the fire department their equipment. It just failed because there are more questions to be asked. So one more meeting, 7 more days, I don't think is going to make a big difference. I don't think. I understand people feel as though it needed to be done 2 weeks ago when it came in. It couldn't have been done, and the criticism was that this was political because they just came to understand this in February. They had a press release about it last August. They could have had several updates about what was going on. And if they only found the equipment since last February, that's fine too, but it's 7 months later, and 1 week isn't asking much for the city council to have questions answered.
Okay, so it'll be Monday night, the 23rd.
Mhm.
What time, Ann?
I think it's gonna be at 6 p.m. if I
Okay.
remember right. Yeah.
And what will the meeting entail in terms of presentations?
Not sure, that will be up to the finance chair. And she'll work with the administration to do that. But obviously, I don't think the Dr. Priestley is going to be back. So if there was any more science questions that needed to be asked that didn't get asked last night, that's an unfortunate thing because it got shut down for the conversations. And I think we do have a one member that's a PhD, and she has a background in chemistry. So she has questions. And does that mean that she's going to say no to the financing? No, I think she's just really trying to understand the methodology. Now, other people might say we've read it and I don't need to know about the science, but that's the presentation they were giving. So if you're giving a presentation on science and you have people that understand science, they're going to ask those questions. So, and what we're really there to do is to talk about financing, and it goes both ways. So we need to be able to ask those questions. And the doctor was only going to be available last night, and we'll move on to hopefully getting some of the finance questions. And my hope is that all the questions will be answered. And if they're not, and you still lose a vote, it's because there's still people that have questions. What I can guarantee you, Joe, is at some point there's going to be a vote on this and it will be approved. I can't talk for other people as to where they stand on those things.
Okay, all right. Yeah, the vote was 5-4 last night, I believe.
Yep,
Not
5-4. Yep.
Yeah. What would it take? What questions do you have, Ann, that need to be answered before you can vote yes?
I have a lot of financial questions that need to be I really did feel like last night that if I just jumped into the finances, if I wanted to level set, you could feel the temperature in the room about the science. But again, level setting that is really how I looked at it, as being able to understand, like I totally understand what PFAS is, the forever chemical and the danger of it, as well as the fire retardant. I can't say the brom. I never can say that one. So I'm just going to skip it. I kept saying it last time. Like, I'm going to skip it. But the reality of it is, PFAS is in everything. When you microwave something in plastic in your microwave, it's PFAS is in there. When they go into fires, the construction equipment, the construction material that they built those houses in have PFAS in it. That's why they were talking about the inhaling the smoke and the ashes. They're exposed to it far more than the average person is, but they're exposed to it because we're all living in homes that have a lot of PFAS in them and in our cars and PFAS is in just about everything. And we're just like asbestos was, we're just finding out about the dangers of it. And we're absorbing it with our, our rain jackets that maybe not to the same degree, but again, because they're going into fires, but we are all exposed. It's a dangerous chemical. And my hope is that it's going to be eradicated from everything, but it's still going to be in our water and our food supply channels too. So it certainly shouldn't be in their equipment.
Okay. All right. We'll catch up again next Tuesday if that's okay. See how that meeting goes.
Absolutely. Always.
Okay.
Always. Yeah.
Then you had your regular council meeting.
Yeah. So we kicked off the meeting and then we went right back into finance. And then when the vote was I think the chair wanted to put like she felt as though it was getting to a point where she wanted to either refer it back to committee or take the vote. We took the vote. And then we started back up with the council meeting and we went right back in and we had the open forum and there were a lot of people that came up for that. And many of them were geared at the firefighters and many other things too. So I think it's a good opportunity to listen to people. And I definitely think everybody was heard. And then we moved on to the regular meat of the meeting, which I don't have my meeting agenda in front of me, so maybe you can tell me what's on that. So
Oh,
I
sure.
think, yeah.
It was an order from the mayor amending the municipal code regarding synthetic drugs.
Yeah, and that went into ordinance. So
Okay.
that would be something that will have to come out of ordinance. And that, we're getting a lot of feedback from both sides of that. People are educating us on that synthetic drug. And we'll have that in ordinance. We'll have that discussion. And then after that, I think, was it my order? I can't remember. Yep. So my
Your
order was
resolution, yes, yep.
so my resolution was going to go into finance. And really what I was asking for that is, and we really wanted to have bond counsel finance, all of the things that we do. We had Director Del Baba up at the podium last night, really talking about before we go into the budget, the fiscal year 2027 budget, the issues that we're having with our finances. We have $1.6 billion worth of debt. We want to see long-term and short-term debt, not handpick things, but really understand where we stand as a city right now, because we have a lot of big projects that want to be discussed. And we always talk about bonds just as the bond that's coming in, not about and they'll give you a little map saying these things are going to roll off. But what we're not seeing is what things are being expensed at and what they're being used for and how long they're going to be around. Short-term debt is a ban, and then they'll roll it over to a long-term debt, or even the sales of the proceeds, to understand a little bit more about the sales of the proceeds for bonds, the premiums that they get back. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered before we go into this budget cycle. So that's what this resolve is about. And I'm looking for that presentation in April before we go in. I think the mayor said he's going to be coming May 7th with the budget. So May 7th will be when the budget comes out. And then so we'll have at least two meetings in April that they'll be able to come in and present to one of those. It might be a finance meeting because it was referred to finance, so it won't be in the regular council meeting. But we should be having in one of the regular council meetings coming up in April the report on the Monroe building. It's been past 30 days at this point. I did give a 30-day kind of window on that. And I was asked to be patient because some of the people that are working on that have some family issues, which is understandable. But, there are other people that can do the presentation. So we'll be expecting that in April for the Monroe building. So.
Okay. And then Councilor Hubely had a resolution regarding Department of Veterans Affairs.
Yep. So that was just going to be a letter that we were going to give the authorization to say that we supported it. And because they had already gotten so much communications about it, it's already been closed because they're dealing with it. So a positive action happened before we were even able to send the letter. But I thought it was important for Councilor Hubely to take the time to educate people who were not aware of what was happening. And he did that. He took that time last night because it was definitely, if it hadn't happened, it was an important step for us to take.
Okay, very good. Then just two gifts, one to DARE, one to the fire department.
Yep, one to DARE, one to the fire department, which, we basically accept those gifts and they go in and then we send a thank you card. And we are always appreciative of all of the gifts that we get here in the city of Quincy because it takes all of us to be able to make the city work.
Anything else, Ann?
No, I think it was, I do think it was probably for where I was sitting, it's a hard meeting to go through because you're trying to hear and listen and, and understand. And sometimes it seems as though from one side of the room might seem as though we weren't listening or understanding, but I think there were far more caring people listening than they thought. And, people need to have the opportunity to get their questions answered so they can get to their vote personally. And if in the end, I always say this at the end, if there's one person that's just not able to get to the vote, they have to vote no. But, at the same time, we want to get to a yes. And last night was 5-4, and hopefully when we move forward, it will be, if not 9-0, it will pass. So I believe we're in the right direction for this.
All right. We'll catch up next Tuesday if that's okay.
Perfect, Joe. Thank you very much. Enjoy. Happy St. Patrick's Day.